Hello everyone and welcome to our Circle and Salve Women. Today our topic of discussion is tell your son to tell her today. And so this really has to do with my article that has everything to do with why it's not good for a young man to wait until, they finally find the courage to speak to a girl. Because when she is a true gem, when she is someone that is noteworthy from the beginning, you should not wait to tell her that, and because it might be too late. So here's my story on that. And it's interesting because I've been married to my husband for almost, 3 decades now. Your stories tend to repeat itself. And so just recently we were talking about, just those what if moments. And I remember bringing up that one time, which he is very familiar with because, again, we've spoken of many of our stories together and have helped each other to think things through. And this one is about my very first crush. Now, I arrived in America around the time that I was 7 going on to 8, and I was going into 2nd grade. And I remember this one young brunette, brown-eyed, pretty red lips, very soft-spoken, and just a really nice, gentle of a smile young boy. And we loved to play tag with him. All the little girls loved to play tag with him during recess because he loved chasing us. And I just remember having such great memories at this one school, but it was very short-lived because, again, if you have read any of my articles, I went to like 6 different elementary schools. By the time that I had gone into junior high and I had been bused to this one school, I really learned that being a minority makes you stronger, makes you better, but really that sometimes the world is divided based off of how they were brought up and trying to attempt to make you believe that, there is a division, or that your like and someone else's like is not to be together. And so this was something that was trying to be impounded in my head, and yet I, being a nonconformist and really a rebel at heart, never really believed that. So it just so happened that when I entered this junior high and I see this familiar face from a distance, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's the boy that used to chase me around in recess. Was that when I was in 2nd grade? And so in my mind, I naturally always, thinking that the opposite, because, by this time you journeyed into starting to like the opposite, right? And so, I really took in my mind thinking, wow, perhaps we could continue where we left off, and just as a thought. And I recall seeing him from a distance, yet every time that I would try to meet eye contact with him, he would look away. And in fact, his kind friends around would talk and he would never say a thing to me. Even when I would try to really engage some form of a conversation amongst the group, he would never have anything to say. In fact, he would just sometimes giggle and kind of, have that awkward type of behavior and then walk away. And so I always had to keep myself dignified and think to myself like, okay, obviously he doesn't think anything of me or whatever. And and I just kept throughout the junior high times, I would actually still look his way, but then eventually I just got to the point, it's like, okay, maybe we're in 2 different worlds. And he definitely has that mindset that I have, unfortunately, ran into some people having that mindset of we're just never going to be, in the same world. Well, lo and behold, by the time we were in high school, we ended up being in the same high school. This was the only time in my life where I actually had a permanent residence until I graduated from high school. I mean, it was just by chance and by fortune that I ended up going from my freshman year to my senior year in the same high school. And, given that in elementary I had gone to 6 and then 2 in junior high. So it was interesting because then I felt this sense of knowing, the students that had attended schools in different schools with me throughout time, it was kind of interesting because there were familiar faces that then became this melting pot in high school. And he was one of them. And in my thoughts, I had eventually in junior high started to think, well, he's never going to say anything to me. I've moved on. It's fine. It's okay. He's a good guy, just not for me. And yet sometimes in high school I would still see him, and from a distance still see that that he would avoid my gaze, and it was just, we never really ended up being in the same classes together, so I never got to see him other than we were out in the hallways, and yet he would never still say anything to me. However, it was for me, again, being a nonconformist to the beliefs of others, it was always my heart, what my heart was telling me. I always believed that God was there to tell me the truth. And so I continued on to believe, it had nothing to do with your exterior. It was always the character of the person on the inside. So if there was another guy that, became my boyfriend at that time or whatever, it wasn't as if like I just kind of hung on and said, oh, I won't, talk to anyone unless he talks to me. It wasn't like that. It was more of that mutual respect and understanding. It's like, okay, if he's not going to say anything to me, if he's not going to look my way, I'm not going to sit here and just think to myself that there's still that possibility if evidently his actions are telling me otherwise. So, for me, it was an admiration of a past memory, nothing more. It was only until senior year, however, right at the time when we were all senior year going to go to prom, I remember one of the girls had walked by me and said, "Hey, you going to prom with anyone or so?" And I was like, oh, why do you, why are you asking? She said, "Oh, nothing." And I had already been, it was my senior year, and 18 at that time, I was already starting to date my husband, my greatest friend in the near future to be. But no one had known that, and at school. And so at that time, I remember being home, and I received a call from someone, and I kid you not, I don't know what came over me, but I suddenly became enraged by just the sound of his voice. And I look back now and I understand why, but at that time, hormones acting up, you're, at that age where you don't understand usually how you tend to, your emotions kind of retaliate in a way where it just takes over, and then you don't even realize that you're just going with the flow, your body's following the emotions, and you're hearing yourself speak in the manner of maybe what you hadn't intended of being, and yet I spoke with so much rage in my words and in my actions through the phone. It had been my crush from second grade who called me, and at that time, he's trying to recall who he is. He sounds very nervous, and as he's saying who he is and so forth, all of a sudden, I kid you not, I don't even know. I mean, I'm a little bit, never having any regrets of how you behave, right? Because you are who you are at that moment. But at the same time, I recall myself starting to get infuriated. Like, I was just wondering, what in the world is he calling me now? For like, after all these years, never speaking to me. And all those things just started to come to mind. Like, I don't know, like it was going in my head. Like, it was just so quick. I started yelling. Started, screaming at him and telling him, why is he calling me? Why dare he call me? And he was trying to explain, do you know who this is? It's so-and-so. And I was like, I know exactly who you are. How dare you call me? And he's trying to kindly ask me to go to prom with him. And I'm like, no way would I ever go to prom with you. Why would I ever go to prom with you? And it just, I don't know, perhaps the word berating him in my unfortunate manner, how I was behaving. And by the time that I had hung up the phone, all I could hear was the sadness and confusion in his voice. And really, it hadn't been, because I was not mature enough to truly understand my emotions then. But as I became a fully mature adult, and that's more like when you're in your 30s, like you really think back and go, oh, let me think about all my immature times of how I behaved and why, and let me try to really think to myself why I behaved in the manner that I did. And having some early discussions with my husband, he really helped me to understand that this young man perhaps was quite intimidated by me and never really found a way to speak to me. And those were actually the words that he was really saying, my crush over the phone, of, I remember just, why are you calling me now? And he's explaining, like, I didn't know what words to say to you, and, never knew, never came out. Every time I tried to speak, I couldn't even look at, just so many things that was just, and it was just like, it was just rambling, nervous words coming out of his mouth that didn't do anything to appease how I had felt at that given time, because it was like a little bit too late. And I was, to say the least, a bit offended in my heart as a young lady, like, what did not give you the courage to talk to me? So anyhow, my husband and I, he helped me to realize from the male perspective that sometimes, they just don't have the courage to speak to the person that they do like, and it takes them a while to find the courage. And us ladies, we could be at fault at that at times, because we don't always say the kindest things to guys who do find the courage to speak to us and do find the time, the strength to finally say what they wanted to say, and they perhaps stayed up at night to think about, and then we just crush them right when they finally have the moment to say it or the courage to say it. And I look back now, and perhaps that's how he might have felt, that what if I was to reject him. But all those times, you have to understand, I was given the impression that he had thought of me as someone who he did not want in his world, because I had come into communities in cities where there were people that were trying to impose that type of mentality of you are not our kind, and therefore you do not belong, and so forth. And it was like me always fighting against that type of mentality. And when I ran into him again and had that opportunity to go, but you're not like that, it was almost like his actions were proving himself to be just that. And it angered me, I guess, when I look back now, when he called me, and he had the audacity to call me right before our graduating year. We were about to graduate during our graduating year at the very last month, and then asking me to prom. And I know now, I realize that he had really worked up the courage to finally ask me, but why wait that long? So it's so wonderful to have that moment to talk it over with your partner for life, of all people, who really helps you to understand that from a male's perspective, it's just hard. It's not always, easy. But my message to all of you dads is, tell your son, who cares? Take that chance. Tell her today. Don't wait. And so what if she just crushes the heck out of you? Guess what? You may have planted that seed where later on, when she's mature enough, because we are by nature, I guess I'm going to speak on my behalf, because other ladies out there may be going, that's that's you, that's not me. And I truly respect that. But at least from my perspective, there were times where I was not in the best character, and I may have said some really, really mean things to the opposite, and whatever they were trying to say or however they were trying to approach me, maybe I didn't return it to their hopes and and to what they had envisioned. And I can't apologize for that, because at that moment it was meant to be. You saw me for who I was at that time, and if you just discontinued because of the way I behaved, and good for you, because you should have not been with me at that time if that's the way I had treated you. And I realize that now, looking back. However, don't just say, well, what if she does turn me down? What if she does refuse me? So what? Tell your son that, tell your son in anything in life. You will never know what will become of something if you give up before it even happens, because in some cases it may end up turning out to be good, or maybe not so good at the beginning, but 5, 10 years, 15 years later, when they've matured enough and they look back and they go, oh my gosh, I was so mean, I should have done something. You know, I mean, I still remember seeing this person at my reunion, still didn't really say anything to me until, like, from a distance said my first and last name, you know, and it was like, that was it? That's all you're gonna say, you know, is in I'm asking me a question, and it was just like, oh, you know, the sadness, because you were never meant to be mine. You were just meant to be a lesson that there are people who really could have had something, and yet they didn't take the chance. And for one, I'm one of those that I am grateful that I am with someone who did take the chance, who did say, you know what, I'm not only going to go for her, but once I have her, I will hold on to her and never let her go, and do everything I can to protect her and make sure that she feels protected, because that's how you should handle a treasure. You should say, this is meant to be for me, and I'm going to do everything I can to have it. And even if I don't get it today, I'm going to keep going until it is mine. Persevere. Do not just say to yourself, you know, maybe tomorrow, maybe I'll find the courage tomorrow, maybe I'll find the strength tomorrow. Tell your sons, don't wait till tomorrow. Don't wait, for goodness sakes, until right before prom. You know, just swallow your pride, go through and break through those fears, and no matter what happens, at least you've said what you had to say. You said it in the way that it came out, no matter how imperfect it may be, but you did it, and so that you get better at it. And guess what? Maybe it's not the first person that you fall in love with or head over heels with, but you get better at it every time. Young men out there, you know, and eventually when that right person that was meant to be yours is right there, you will have her, because you've had enough of a practice perhaps in life to be stomped on, who cares? But guess what? You will have had enough practice to, when finally there's that one person, you will go, I'm not giving up on this one. This is going to be mine. So that's with everything in life, you know, and pursue what it is that you feel should be yours. Don't let go, or don't quit before you even start. Tell your sons that, dads, please, because at this point, although I'm so happy, I wouldn't trade my husband for the world, but my husband and I have those moments of what if? So have the courage, and no matter what happens, so what? Okay, you did it. In the words of my mother, God bless us all, may you really pursue anything in life that you want, and no matter what the outcome will be, at least you know you've tried, and then just keep trying, because yours is there. Your gem, whatever it is that you go for, it'll be yours. If it's meant to be yours, it will be yours. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you next time.